Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the ODPP Café. My name is Anita Onuko. I'm your host for the show. This is a show brought to you by the Office of the Director of Public Prosecution. We are live on Facebook, and we are also on YouTube at the Office of the Director of Public Prosecution. Follow us on Twitter at ODPP_KE. And of course, we invite you to subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on Facebook. Invite a friend to join us and follow us for interesting discussions. So this show is brought to you to educate you, to inform you, and to just have a discussion about the law from a lawyer's perspective to an non-lawyer audience. So I am one of the non-lawyer audience like you, or some of you. And I hope that as you watch and listen, then you learn something that can help you when you're either in conflict or in contact with the law. So welcome once again, and I invite you to just comment on our page, ask a question, and definitely we'll see how to interact with your comments and how you engage with us. So this week we've been talking about hate speech. Of course, the campaign drums are louder and louder. Elections are coming up. I think it's about 137 days to election. So it actually behooves us to talk about election preparedness, and that is what we've been doing on our social media pages. And we'll try and do that to the end, up to the election date, not date actually, month of August. So if you want us to discuss anything in that sphere, kindly just let us know, and we'll see how to definitely work on that. So as always, we start with the highlight of the courts. And again, it's not exhaustive, just a few highlights. And also, we let you know what has been happening at ODPP. A lot has been happening. So I'll just take you through to what has been some of the highlights from the courts that we collected for you today. So we start with a case of a driver, a former Mandera County driver. He's been imprisoned to life. He was charged with abduction of 2 Cuban doctors, and he also commissioned a terrorist attack that left 1 police officer dead on 18th of March 2019. And so he was sentenced to life imprisonment. Isaac, or should I say Isaac Robo, I think that's the correct way to pronounce it, was sentenced by Milimani Senior Principal Magistrate Martha Nanzushi after he was found guilty of 4 counts, which included commissioning a terrorist attack, aiding a terrorist act, kidnapping, and fraudulently obtaining an identity card. I don't know whether you remember this. It was back in 2019. And so this case has been concluded, and definitely because it is his right to appeal, I believe he's going to be able to appeal, and we'll see how far that goes. So Honorable Martha Nanzushi, who had the case, was satisfied by the prosecution case led by Harrison Kiarie, who presented evidence beyond reasonable doubt, proving that the accused conspired with the terrorists in committing the said offenses. So that is Mr. Isaac Rubo, who has been sentenced to life. The second story is about Sharon Otieno murder case. The prosecution presented 3 witnesses in the case of Sharon and her unborn baby. Mary Mogire, OCS at Oyugi's police station, I feel like saying Mary Mogaya, OCS at Oyugi's police station, detailed the evidence found at the crime scene where Sharon Otieno's body was found. They included blood-stained tracksuit, an empty sachet of illicit brew, 2 used condoms, and a pair of blue open shoes. So this case is ongoing, and a lot has been happening, and some updates have been on Twitter as well. Remember, this case is against former Migori Governor Okoth Obado. So Migori Governor Okoth Obado and his 2 aides, Kaspal Obiero and Michael Oyamo, are the key suspects in the murder of the former Rongo University student. Like we say, the case continues. So last week we told you about the Aurora and Kimwarer case, where the High Court sort of waived play on after they had the petition by former CS Rotich about his contention. He had a problem with how the charges were constituted against him. So that was a win for ODPP. Again, yesterday, the Aurora and Kimwarer case also got another positive note from the High Court. The High Court Anti-Corruption and Economic Crimes Division at Milimani dismissed a petition by the former CS Treasury, Henry Rotich, seeking to stop his prosecution. So on November 10th, 2020, Mr. Rotich filed a petition to vacate the DPP's decision to charge him, claiming that the DPP exercised his discretion without regard to the provisions of the Constitution and other applicable laws. So that was his petition in November of 2020, and the case was concluded yesterday, and a ruling was made. The former CS is charged with several counts of corruption, including conspiracy and abuse of office, which resulted in the loss of billions related to the Aror and Kimwarer dam projects. I don't know whether you see a pattern of how, and the reason why sometimes cases take too long, because the accused also have their rights, and they also just play along that line to see how, and they stretch cases for that matter. So this is one of those cases that actually proves that sometimes it is on the other side that stretches, makes the case delay. Okay, the other court case is about the decision to charge yet again, just like the one for Rotich. The ODPP received another affirmation from the High Court in Kabarnet when Justice Honorable Korir upheld that the ODPP's 2019 decision to charge guidelines, which are an internal guide for prosecutors, are constitutional and valid. This was a really big win for the ODPP. The judge also held that the power to file charges before courts belong to the DPP and not the IG of police. And when we posted this yesterday, we also put a link to there's a Wadi animation that talks about the decision to charge. And when you hear ODPP speak about this decision to charge, then they call it the most important decision a prosecutor makes. And it is one that is mandated to the ODPP and not shared across the criminal justice system. So it's very important that the mandate of the ODPP is understood. And this ruling yesterday just reinforced that thing, that the ODPP's mandate is on the decision to charge. So the court also held that the police have no power to draft charges and take them to court without the authority of the DPP. Again, when he talked about case management, you saw how he talked about how investigative officers come to ODPP to sort of bring their charge sheet so that they can agree on, they can make the decision to charge or not. They don't go to the courts directly. It's the officers from DPP who go to the courts. So that was also quite a really big win. Now back to ODPP. Yesterday, there was a validation of the ODPP Compendium on Electoral Justice. They are going to tell us what compendium means. Lawyers love big words. The ODPP, together with stakeholders, held a meeting on the validation of the ODPP Compendium on Electoral Justice, a document meant to guide the prosecution of election, hate speech, SGBV, cybercrime and related offenses, jurisprudential developments, and best practices. The ODPP got input on the document from different stakeholders, included IBC, NPS, Judiciary, NCIC, Communication Authority, IPOA, ESCC, LSK, AG's Office, Registrar of Political Parties, KNCHR, Witness Protection Agency, ICJ, UNODC. So this was an event that took place yesterday, and it's what is going to, this leads us into our discussion for today. We're going to talk about the compendium on electoral justice. Please note a new word in your vocabulary. During the meeting, the DPP stated that the office is ready for elections, having set up the Hate Speech and Electoral Justice Division. He also appointed 200 specialized prosecutors countrywide, institutionalized an election committee, and developed election offenses guidelines. Are they ready or not? Of course they are. So like I said, that leads us to the discussion today. We want to talk about election preparedness. We want to talk about hate speech, because it is a time, it is a season for us Kenyans to talk about this. It is what is in our faces every day. We discuss it. It is something you discuss on social media. You discuss it at home. You hear politicians talking about it. But then now we want to understand to what extent can your speech be termed as hate speech, and what can you do as a citizen to help the law enforcement officers deal with hate speech, and how do we avoid our elections being marred by election because, again, of hate speech. So today I have guests. You've never seen them before, and I'm glad they are here on the show with us. I want to take a chance to ask them to introduce themselves, and then we can get into the show. I'll start with the lady. Karibu Stella Chapa, introduction.
Morning. My name is Stella OYAGI, Prosecution Counsel. at the Hate Speech and Election Justice Division, ODPP.
How long have you practiced law?
Hey, almost 10 years.
Hey.
Actually, yes.
That's a long time.
Yes, long time.
Yeah.
I think I'm in my 10th year.
Oh, awesome.
No, I'm entering the 10th year. Yes, entering
the
10th year.
Wapo mahali.
In fact, niko karibu birthday. Banniversary ko karibu kufika.
It's called a banniversary.
Yeah, we call it banniversary.
I am big words. Big words. Yeah. Karibu sana to the show, Stella. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Today you tell us hate speech because it is your expertise clearly. Yeah, your specialty. I want to introduce Wakili. Msanajiita Wakili. As in umwiti Mr. umwiti sa unamwita Wakili. So Wakili, would you introduce?
My name is THUKU, young lawyer working with ICJ Kenya. I haven't been in practice as my senior here for that long, but it's always good sitting with seniors and getting now their experience and how the practice has been over the years. We are here today, of course, like you mentioned, to discuss the compendium and other election-related offences that the ODPP yesterday, under the auspices now of ICJ Kenya, was able to validate. And we are hoping very soon that this validated compendium will now be used by prosecution counsels to ensure that electoral justice is actually achieved. Yes.
Karibu sana to the show.
Asante sana, nashukuru.
Stella, mwambie ujana inaisha.
Hi.
Ujana ni moshi.
Ujana ni moshi. Yeah, so please tell us, what is the role, who is ICJ first of all, and what's your mandate? What do you do?
ICJ Kenya is a non-government an NGO, and we've been in this country for over 50 years. Really? We are actually also will be celebrating over 60 years soon. We've been around. We've seen Kenya before independence and after independence. Our current mandate is to ensure that human rights are upheld, rule of law is upheld, that our people in this country and also over the region can be able to access justice and that justice is done to them. We also look into security reforms and now in specific, the reason we are here today, we are looking at elections and we've been able to look at elections for a very long time in this country. Post the 2010 constitution, we were still monitoring elections and not just in the country, but even in the region. Post 2010, we have been able to look into elections. And to that effect, we have published 2 compendiums, the 2013 compendium and the 2017 compendium. So ICJ Kenya is very intentional when it comes to matters of election. And we are also planning to monitor, we have started monitoring the 2022 election, and we wish to develop even now a bigger compendium from now what we are having at the moment. Yes.
Stella, I wanted to ask you what compendium is. Nikajua pali imetoka. What is compendium?
It's I wouldn't want to say it's a fancy term being used by
so
lawyers.
Fancy. It's such a mouthful. First of all, I had to Google it. I'm like, why would you call something a compendium?
A compendium is simply, for those of us during our high school days, we had a collection of short stories. A compendium can actually be likened to that collection of short stories. Now, this compendium is a detailed document, but the beauty about a compendium is that it's very concise. It's detailed, but very concise. It goes straight to the point. And maybe now an example is what we had yesterday being validated as a compendium. It has all the election offenses being summarized so that now prosecutors can actually look at them in a very easy way. It's a summarized document that helps you to check your facts, check the position of the law in a very easy and effective way. Yes.
Are we saying we've never had a compendium before?
As
like for elections? Like the sort of thing now we are doing now. Is it the first one?
Yes, this is the first one post the 2010 elections.
Okay.
Yes, and we congratulate the ODPP on that.
All right.
Yes.
Feel congratulated, please.
Of course, now
the
there's
behind
now on election offenses there haven't been one, but like I mentioned, 2013 ICJ developed a compendium on some of the cases that were done post now the 2013 elections. And after 2017, we still developed another compendium. And we also wish that we will develop another one after 2022. It's a forte of ours as an institution, developing compendiums.
So King, what is it called? New word for the day? Compendium. Yani inamaanisha short stories, lakini ziko na detail. Is that what you mean?
Yes.
So Stella, just tell us a bit, just definition, because I think we struggle with hate speech as a people. We don't really get to we can't define it. Like if you ask me what hate speech is, I don't know as a citizen. Because what I view as hate speech, you discover somebody comes and says, "Me, I didn't mean that." You get? Yeah. So at what point, what is hate speech? First of all, what is hate speech?
Hate speech is matamshi meant to incite, threaten, or abuse a person or a group of persons. It mostly targets persons of a particular group. So in Kenya, it's based on ethnic lines. It can be published, it can be oral, it can be printed on social media. So anything said could incite the public against another group of persons can be termed as hate speech. Anything meant to threaten a group of persons or an individual is hate speech. Mostly we look at the munyamesema, munyametamka, the hate speech. What was the intention behind it?
Is there ever a good intention for hate speech?
You see, if a public figure says something and you say something, it is
difference.
Yes, kuna difference.
On impact, is it?
Impact na difference because ule akona intention, it is a perceived kuna intention behind it. Amesema towards a certain group of people could stir up something. But if you say it, maybe you say it among your friends, maybe among your family members, inaishia hapo. There is not your effect. It is not. It doesn't trickle down as much as this public figure, because of the people who are listening to him, the audience that is,
and the influence he has on the audience.
Exactly.
All right.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So when did we recognize as a country that hate speech is a thing? When was the awakening? Yeah.
Probably I can even take it a bit back before us as a country discovered. Hate speech has always been there, like Senior has correctly stated. But as a people, even people sometimes become aggressive against each other because of certain things. In fact, somebody from this office once told me that after God, the second thing that rules the world is jealousy. And we saw this being meted out on Nazi Germany when hate speech statements were instigated against the Jew people. And later on, we've seen it in America, where black people, there was the formation of the Ku Klux Klan, the KKK. And we also had the Jim Crow laws. We also had the lynch laws. And you see, these are, like Stella has mentioned, incitement to hatred towards a certain community or a certain group of people because of maybe their color or because of how they talk. And after Nazi Germany, 6 million Jews were killed. In America, up to date, till recently, we saw Floyd Mayweather being killed by police officers because of certain utterances that have been made against a certain group of people. As a country, recently, if we bring it closer home, we saw it happening in Rwanda. And we saw certain people going all out against one community in Rwanda. And I think as we are going to keep on discussing, you will realize that most of these people use hate speech figuratively. Like in Rwanda, I remember when we were watching the proceedings, they were actually saying, let us cut down the tall trees. So, and Stella will also confirm to you that when such figurative language is used, then it becomes a challenge even to prosecute hate speech. So in Rwanda, they say, let us do away with the rodents. Let us cut down the tall trees, the cockroaches. In Kenya, ethnic balkanization of politics. We have always viewed politics in a very ethnic way. And that has become a problem because leaders have now stopped being leaders and have become tribal chiefs who balkanize people in the under now tribes. And after the multi-party, after Section 2A was amended and multi-party democracy was introduced in Kenya, then such utterances became even more common. Yes. We saw the Molo clashes happening, and then now it manifested itself completely in 2007. Yeah. We saw so many people being killed. Yes. Over 1,300 people were killed. 650,000 were displaced. Up to date in this country, we still have internally displaced persons.
Oh, that's a term that comes up actually.
You know, and this just tells you that hate speech is a crime that cannot be tolerated in this country. We've seen its effects elsewhere. We've seen its effect in this country. And I don't think as a people we should condone it. Yeah. I think I'll let Stella maybe mention the TJRC commission and maybe how now hate speech was made into law.
So how did we get hate speech to be criminalized?
After the 2007 elections, you saw the chaos that happened. Yeah. There was a commission that was formed to address the issues that brought about the chaos after the election. So many issues, land injustices, previous election issues. Zote zilikuwa zimeaccumulate. So the commission, after going around the country, they recommended the formation of TJRC to bring people together, Kenyans together, and try to resolve the past differences, land issues, so that at least moving forward, Kenyans could move on as one. And now after TJRC, that was 2008. Yes. We then promulgated the constitution in 2010 and incorporated NCIC as an institution. Now it's a constitutional body that brings cohesion in the country. That is why you find that NCIC, anytime there is any issue to do with hate speech or anything through going through that line, NCIC comes in.
Must be involved.
Yes, and they investigate. And
but they don't prosecute.
No, they don't prosecute. They recommend charging of perpetrators, and they do reconciliation when it is agreeable among the communities and the perpetrator. Yes.
I'm just wondering, when we talk about hate speech, we talk about the impact on me, the citizen, not so much is an utterer word, the person who says it. But then why is it that when somebody is accused of hate speech, it is me who will say, hata hakumaanisha hivyo. Do you get? So what is the role of the citizen in making hate speech, in curbing hate speech?
See, kwanza, it goes down to interpretation. When you say something, what was the intention behind it? What were those words meant to mean to your listener? And the best person probably to interpret will be an expert. Alikuwa anamaanisha nini akisema hivi? Now, for a citizen, we want to live in a peaceful community. If you live somewhere and based on your party affiliation, your tribe, your ethnicity, you're discriminated, especially during this election period, you will not live peacefully. And you see this chaos emanate after elections. People invest in various towns, so you don't look at the tribe, where you come from. You just want to invest. You want to build your business there. But during election periods, there is that tension that happens around that time. So you feel, I don't feel safe here. I need to go back home until election period imeisha. Why do we do that? It is one country. We don't have another Kenya. Where will you go? So it is best if all citizens, generally, we embrace each other. We accept that we are democratic. You're allowed to be a member of any political party, support any candidate peacefully, not through violence. Yes.
We are very passionate about our elections.
Very.
So maybe the question again is, we still seem not to have learned a lesson. post 207, post 1992
to
207,
97, 202,
Yeah.
207, 2013 also.
Imagine that. So, and now when the DPP made the announcement yesterday that there are 200 prosecutors deployed across the country,
Yes.
are we saying we haven't learned? Because then that means there is an expectation that this is still going to be an issue, and that an institution like ICJ actually invests in the compendium,
Yes.
and helps ODP. So are we saying we haven't really learned our lesson? Are we still that exposed as a country? Because you do monitoring.
Yes.
What are you saying?
What we are saying is that, as Stella was talking, I remembered a book by Ken Walibora. It's called Mbaya Wetu. To mean he's bad, but he's ours.
Oh, mbaya wetu.
Ni mbaya, lakini ni wetu. So, and this has been a notion that, and it has been propaganda that the leadership of the country has been able to instill in the people of this country. And that is why Stella was saying, as a citizenry, why are we still defending people who have made utterances of hate speech? It's because he's bad, but he's ours. He's our bad person.
Yeah.
As an organization, ICJ Kenya, we wish to bring best practices on board. Internationally, what has been happening, the way we've mentioned, what we saw in Rwanda, ICJ as an institution also now monitors what is happening in Rwanda. That is the much we can say maybe about what we do in Rwanda. And we can tell you for a fact that the effects of now electoral violence, or violence that is brought about by now elections, because of the passion that we have towards leadership, it can leave a country in a very devastating situation. That is why we found it wise to develop this resource tool, because like we mentioned, there have been problems in prosecuting offenses on elections. Then the ODPP finds it wise to appoint 200 of his team to specifically deal with issues election offenses. We need to prosecute these election offenses so that at the end of the day we can say electoral justice has been achieved. If we are to say confidently that the person who is sitting on that seat is the rightful person, then we must prosecute election offenses. We must monitor as now civil society, and that is now where we come in to help institutions of government like the ODPP, and we've also been working closely with the judiciary in training them now in relation to election offenses related to technology, because that has also been a thing that has been coming up from the 2013 elections. 2017 we had things like fungueni server and all that. How then do, as a judge, does even a judge understand fungueni server inamaanisha nini and all that? They might know, but does the Kenyan public know that? So we are trying to provide civic education to the general population of Kenya, building capacity in government institutions like the ODPP, NCIC, and the judiciary in ensuring that electoral justice is actually achieved. Because electoral justice means a peaceful future and a prosperous future, not just for me, but for my young children, for generations to come. That is now how ICJ looks at the whole issue of elections. When we came in, we asked, do we just observe the elections on the E-Day? We say no, election is a whole process. It's not just an event of a day. So as we are speaking, we are monitoring what is happening in the country. We will make recommendations. We will say this is actually what led now to the result that we will see on after August the 9th. And then after August the 9th, still there needs to be something that will be done. And that is now where organizations like ICJ Kenya come in.
I'm just wondering, because we're very passionate about our elections, do you guys start monitoring as soon as a president has been sworn in? Because it looks like that's when campaign starts in Kenya, right? You must be busiest in Kenya, in the region. So Stella, what is in the compendium? Because we are told it's a compilation of. So what is in it?
It's a guide on how to prosecute election offenses and hate speech offenses. It has identified the institutions that work together with ODPP, the key stakeholders such as NCIC, IBC, the National Police, EACC, Asset Recovery, Registrar of Political Parties. And it has also identified the different statutes that rely on in handling election and hate speech offenses.
Yeah.
It has also given us a summary of the offenses, what a prosecutor looks at in terms of what are the elements of each offense, the possible penalty in making a decision to charge. And at the end, it has sample charge sheets of the offenses that are stipulated in all the laws relating to elections, Election Offences Act, and NCIC Act. Yes.
NCIC Act.
Yes. So it's a summary of everything,
Yeah.
elections and hate speech in one document.
All right.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Compendium.
Yes.
Compendium. Well, we forever struggle with that word. Yeah. So, what are some of the penalties? Like, what is a penalty for hate speech, for example? Does hate speech have degrees, or is it just hate speech?
For Kenya, mostly in most offenses, it gives like a maximum up to. It says up to. Yes, a fine of up to. So it cannot exceed.
It can't exceed.
Yes. I think it's 200,000 for the offense of hate speech. Yeah. But then it depends. But then there are also other offenses. You see, not just publishing, speaking, publishing.
And publish,
That tracing of nani amesema.
Yeah.
No confirm ni amesema.
Yeah.
Yes, it's a lot more than just getting the sentence. Before we get to the sentence, a lot more happens in between, from the time offense may happen to the time tunaenda kotini and prosecuting.
Yeah, okay.
Yes.
How successful have you been in conducting civic education? Have you started?
You correctly joked that elections start after another election cycle. We elect a president and it seems like we are already again in a campaign mode. We are already anticipating the next president. ICJ Kenya has been successful. I can confidently state that even now, from our interactions with people in social media, in a day, our communications person tells us that we get over 4,000 interactions from our posting, from our media posts. So we speak to people when we meet them, and we tell them elections are not a do or die thing, and they are not a 5-year period thing. That is why now institutions like IEBC, they come up now with timelines and a calendar on how elections are supposed to be conducted in this country. So generally, I would say we've been not alone, because we can't do this alone as ICJ, but the civic space has been very instrumental in ensuring that the Kenyan public is actually knows what is actually happening. For instance, there is a movement called Angaza. They've started something now we are calling a red card campaign, where we are flagging out leaders that are actually have integrity issues. So if you've been accused of corruption before, we give you a red card. If you've been accused now of even hate speech before, we are saying this person actually was accused of hate speech. So we are holding our leadership accountable.
Does it make a difference? Sometimes it feels like in Kenya, when you give me a red card, you're making me more popular. I mean, there's something that is not adding up. What is it that the Kenyan public is not getting about hate speech and elections? What are we not getting? Because even when a youth become the young generation are just getting into the cycle as well. You see flared emotions on social media just because mtu wetu So what is it? Because you can't regulate some things. So I don't know, this is just now maybe out of the law. What is actually your opinion about this? Why are we not getting it?
From my opinion, I would say it's simply said that for every action, there will be a reaction.
Yes.
And sometimes evil fights against good that is being done. Like we've heard people say that corruption is fighting back.
It does.
And the Kenyan politician has ensured that he has captured the mind of the people of this country to the extent that thinking independently does not resonate well now with the common mwananchi, because these are the same people, like you're saying, who will utter utterances that are not, that actually might incite violence or threaten the peace of the country. But it's the same people that again will line up in streets to demonstrate on behalf of these people. So sometimes these politicians also have very tactical ways of fighting back against the good that is being done by the few people now in society. I would identify that as a problem that we are having as a nation.
Yesterday when I was posting on Twitter, I wanted to write, the law is very clear, it's not cliche. It's not just a cliche. But of course it's not my personal handle, so I had to delete. Because when you look at the legal framework, it is there, it is clear. So I feel like we need to address the citizen, the role of the citizen in this thing. So how do you treat like evidence, for example? How would you want a citizen to bring in evidence? And the DPP was actually on record yesterday talking about this evidence issue. That yes, this thing goes live on social, watu wanakasirika, tunapiga kelele, and then now kesi inaenda court, but there's no evidence. So what happens? What can you tell Anita out there about evidence, especially in these cases?
You know, court of public opinion is very busy. Court of public opinion, wame conclude, wametoa verdict
in that space.
Lakini, kwa ground vitu ni different. You know, ODP does not work alone. We have various organs that support us. You see, like investigators, DCI, NPC, NPS, sorry. Once an offense is committed, one do investigate. They go, if it's electronic evidence, you have to actually have the original. If it's a clip, original of whatever.
Simu yangu lazima ikuwe imeichukua hiyo video.
Yes. Na hii simu sasa ukituletea hii simu ndio ili record. Main number yake ni hii. As in it
you can get all those details.
Evidence, you see electronic evidence. Iko na nini ya like iko na chain yake. Hauwezi distort. So hata ukienda utoe clip hapo uweke kwa CD, lakini inaonyesha the dates are different. It means you've tampered with the evidence. It means it cannot go anywhere. Electronic evidence is something that if you interfere with, umeharibu kila kitu.
Wait, Stella. I walk into the police station with my phone.
And are you willing to go and testify and record?
Are you seeing how the citizen is also in a space?
You see
kwanza kaka simu kangu nimesave pesa. Alafu mnameniende kwa karao tumwambie simu yangu.
Muachie.
Alafu ni muachie.
Aende achie expert mwingine I extract your evidence. Nitatusaidia kwa kesi yetu.
Is that the only way?
You see, the investigators, now NCAC comes in. NCAC has investigators. They send their people to these rallies. Once, when people are talking, they are recording, for example, what is happening. If something is uttered, that is not supposed to be uttered, at least we have someone who is an investigator, which is easy to get that evidence. You know, so we move on to the next step. Go and process that cyber crime. Then we have at least something substantive. We have the evidence now. But what normally happens, we see it on TV, we see it on social media, but not tracing the person who recorded this camera now, for example, the person behind the camera. Can you bring this clip to us? We take it to the experts to extract this evidence, this piece of evidence. Itusaidie kesi yetu. This person maybe is contracted by a private company. This person cannot, the company now cannot exactly. We are a business entity. We have contract with these politicians, their businesses. Unatuharibia biashara in short. So we cannot interfere. Find another way. No, that is where the problem is, especially with electronic evidence. Yes. Once it is the evidence is collected well and preserved well, then it is very easy to have the case prosecuted in court because hakuna tampering hapo katikati. The chain of custody of the evidence has not been tampered with by anybody.
Okay, I'm wondering, does it have to be presented in that manner, recorded?
If it's electronic.
Hate speech. Can I just go and say, I had THUKU say something that is quite inflammatory? I had.
You had. You see, you have to prove.
Yes.
You had. So where was it said? In a public gathering? Who
Mimi
was
na
there?
mic
Who is the
tulisikia.
audience?
Mimi na mic tulisikia tulikuwa kwa audience. Huyu msee alisema kitu. Hatuwezi report hivyo.
And I present aje kotini.
Sema kizungumkuti.
Nitai present aje the exact words. Alisema 1 2 3 4 5.
Yeah.
How will I present it in court? And this is a public figure. We are assuming kulikuwa na much bigger audience. Unaona? So wale watu wote, other than just you hearing, is there anything else to support what you had? Ataruka aseme mimi sikusema hivyo. Mimi hata sikukuwa. How will you prove he was there? How will you prove he was there? Mimi sikukuwa. In fact hata sijui. Hiyo siku nilikuwa
mali. So it's quite important that they have to be recorded.
If it's electronic evidence, yes.
It has to be.
If it's published, yes. The same thing. If it's published on social media. Yes. You see, if you text something, a tweet, na mimi retweet.
Yes.
Nani amesema ni mimi ama ni yeye? Unaona sasa?
So
who is the originator of that information? Because mimi na forward tu kitu nimeona huyu amesema.
Do you have capacity to find the originator? Because then maybe it could act as a deterrent. Utapatikana anyway.
As Kenya, yes. As Kenya, yes. CAK is there.
Who is CAK?
Communication Authority of Kenya, yes. On a license, yes, on a license this.
So they can find people who had behind pseudos and bots.
Yes. You have the capacity.
Okay.
They trace. Unajua in originally imetoka IP number, IP number of the exact laptop ama computer, location. Yes, we have the facilities.
Yeah. Kuna kizungu ingine nasikianga kwa TV ukiwatch zile drama za those law. Subpoena. Do you have that in Kenya?
Yes,
you? Yes, can you see So but anyway, can't you compel like a media house? Can you compel them by law to bring in the camera that was used for this? Because if you watch something, say on XX TV, can they be compelled to bring in that evidence? Because I think even when I had the DP talk yesterday, he was like, we actually want you media to work with us to bring this evidence. But then looks like they are also like, biashara or whatever stops them. Or maybe they don't want to be seen against or for. They don't want to show their allegiances. Yeah, they're impartial or political, whatever. But then can you compel? Can you say, can NCIC, for example, come and tell ODPP, we saw this thing on XX TV, compel them? Or who should compel who to bring evidence? That I mean,
not to mean an investigating officer makes an application in court or even a prosecutor from the ODPP to request for a court order to get information from that institution on this particular clip that is critical to our evidence.
Okay.
Now, you see, inakuja the recording, the person who recorded the gadget, and probably the person who recorded.
So the cameraman, the gadget,
and that information now.
And the information.
And you'll rely on that person to be a witness.
The cameraman?
Yes, the person who recorded. Nilikuwa hapa, hii ni machine yangu, mimi ndo nilikuwa natumia kamera. Siku fulani nilikuwa hapa, nilitumia hii kamera number this, the way it is described. And this is what was said. So hii machine yangu ni record information ndio hiyo. No, getting that person
admissible. To that extent it is admissible. Mimi nilirecord na ile machine yangu.
After now it has been certified. Yes, the information was recorded by this device. It is true, there is no tampering by the cybercrime. Yes. Okay. Getting that person to come and give evidence is very difficult. Yes.
So those are quite big challenges.
Yes. Yes. We'd rather use our own government institutions because we're equipped.
Yes.
They go to the ground when these rallies are happening. They do the recording. If an offense is committed, it is easier to collect that evidence and preserve it and present it in court.
Okay.
Yes.
And still back as a citizen. What can be done? Because the law is clearly there. So again, you see, you need the citizen to support you in this process of collecting evidence, being a witness. So what can be done to bring the citizen to the table?
one thing I can, maybe before I add on to what the citizen needs to do, I would like to emphasize on the coordinated role of different government agencies, of duty bearers in ensuring that we are able to prosecute some of these offenses. And like Stella has correctly mentioned, there is a role that the Communications Authority has to play. There is a role for NCIC. And of course, we need arms of government or different institutions of government speaking to each other so that we can know that NCIC actually has people monitoring those political rallies. Because now that reduces the evidentiary threshold. Because if politicians know that people from NCIC are actually with us in this rally, then they will be very careful at the kind of utterances they make. Because NCIC, if NCIC could come directly to the ODPP, you see the evidentiary level is not, we don't have to get mic, we don't have to get a camera that is being used for personal business. Now let these people be out there. Let the investigative arms also, like now the IG, the police officers that go to make sure that there is law and order during rallies. Let them also be there to monitor these things and actually say, we are not just here to be seen. We are here to actually look at you. And of course, the challenges that she has presented. In this country, we have freedom of speech as articulated in Article 33.
Stop there. So at what point do you cross the line?
Now you see, it becomes a problem because the law is not, I wouldn't say, the law is kind of vague. Because the distinction now between freedom of speech and hate speech, there is a very thin line. And those are some of the elements she was trying to identify. To what extent was this information disseminated? What intent did it carry when it was being communicated to the general public? Again, we have seen politicians now make excuses. The way I said, when they say we don't want stains, and say, I didn't want stains on my shirt. I didn't want stains on my trouser. Stains are on clothes, not on people. Stains. So these guys become very clever in evading now justice. When you say cut down the tall trees, you say, there were tall trees that were blocking the sun or something. So we decided to cut down those
suggest that they need to be cut.
You know. And this has been now the problem when it comes to prosecuting. But at least now we know for a fact, when she was talking about, let us bring experts to actually tell us, when this person said this is actually what they meant. Now this was the likely impact that it would have on that particular society when these utterances were made. The citizen, on the other hand, the citizen needs to emancipate himself. Ngugi writes very well, decolonizing the mind.
I feel like you need to sing that song for Bob Marley. I feel like you need to sing a song.
You know, when in a country like ours where we have held politicians in very high statures,
and we still do,
you know, it becomes a problem because they become they become demigods, the people that demigods. They say, we do. They cough, we catch the cold. They sneeze, they say jump, we ask how high. Politicians have become very controlling. So again, the citizen that is watching us today, make efforts to ensure that the decision you are making is solely yours, and not just, I love the drafters of, we are the drafters of the Constitution. The spirit of the Constitution is that we are not just giving ourselves this nation, but this nation belongs to us, to those who heroically fought for this nation, those who bled and died for this nation. It is theirs, it is ours, and it is for future generations and for posterity. So if then we don't protect the country, the integrity of the nation, then no one can do it for us.
So Stella, There's an aspect of multi-agency cooperation that has come out very clearly. The ODPP doesn't work on its own. There's a whole system that now brings the whole to life. But then the compendium you say ODPP has a strategy. What, in a nutshell, what's the strategy? Because now we say, even in the news yesterday, we say the ODPP is ready for elections. What is the strategy?
Number one, the strategy was identifying focal point councils who on the ground, who will be handling election-related cases as they come in, starting from the election period up to conclusion. The team will also monitor what is happening on the ground. There'll be a call center where any offense that happens, we are aware and we have taken steps. If it's directing another institution, investigate and forward the file, we're all on the same page. Now, when it comes to now the prosecuting itself, we have prepared the guidelines. If this is the kind of offenses that may happen as established by the statutes, these are the elements that you have to look out for as a strategy to ensure that the cases that go to court have been properly investigated, and we expect to get convictions. Yes, so that is the strategy that the office has employed to ensure that during this election period, everything is on course well, and the office is ready, ready for any event that happens concerning elections and anything that might happen. Yes. Okay.
Interesting. So on social media, this must be YouTube or Facebook. I think it's Facebook. Martin Mugo amesema ndio kuingia wadau. Ndio wadau. Then Geoffrey Otieno says, I'm in, like nimeingia. Kindly Miss Stella, hii tu ni yako Stella. Help me understand this. Why is it that the government does not provide opportunities for those students, who have a diploma degree or other certificate in criminology? I don't know why Geoffrey thinks you should answer this. Does it mean criminology course in Kenya isn't marketable, or is it a must that one must join a police force for him to be absorbed as a CID detective? And itabidi umejibu tu ka prosecutor.
But recently we recruited, what I know for a fact is, in the division hate speech, we have a researcher who has done criminology. Oh, okay. Yes, so the government does not also employs, I think, for as long as you're qualified and they have advertised, you'll be taken in. And
also, I think because of unemployment in Kenya, when one position is announced, there are like 1,000 candidates for any given position. So Geoffrey, Stella says, actually, they actually get absorbed. So maybe just look out for positions that will be advertised. So he says, from the knowledge I have is that Office of DPP and DCR like brothers. I think he's still trying to make a case as to why criminology students need to be. Martin Mugola aliingia, Mdauli aliingia late, I think.
They're two different institutions.
They are two different institutions.
Yes, two different institutions, separate arms of government. Yes,
even
separate
human resource needs are different.
Exactly. Yes, exactly.
Martin Mugo, thank you so much for joining. The judgment delivered in Cabinet was a strong vindication to the independence of the DPP office. We are headed in the right direction. Remember what the judgment on the decision to charge yesterday? Yes. That was quite big. Clement says, Compendium, Compendium is a compilation of information related to a particular subject matter, mostly meant to guide practice. Yes. I have to say, this guy is called Clement Okoth.
That explains everything.
That explains. Thanks, Clement. Becky Mwiruri Mulure, thumbs up. Luke says, Luke is one of our favorites here. If people become violent to police throwing stones to them, is it justifiable instance to use deadly force? So there's that expectation that there'll be drama. Then police will come at you. So no, first of all, citizens, the ones we are really calling upon, will start throwing stones at the police. So Luke is asking, are the police justified to
use force?
There
are guidelines that have been set out very clearly that there is the force that the citizens use. Anytime, even when you are faced with aggression, the kind of force that you retaliate with really matters. So if they are throwing stones, why would you use a bullet? You know? So if somebody comes at you with a broomstick and wants to hit you, and then you retaliate that force with a panga.
Don't make sense.
You know, it doesn't make sense. We know sometimes the citizen can try and now contravene the law by using force, coming to the police now with such violence.
But you're a law
you know,
enforcer for a reason.
you are deadly force. If the force is deadly to the point that it threatens the life of the officer, then that is the only time the police officer is actually allowed to also retaliate now with force. But law enforcers have special training on how to handle rowdy crowds. Not the way we've seen crowds being handled, because we've seen children lose their lives. We've seen innocent young people lose their lives. We've seen even now the general public losing its life to police brutality. Something that as ICJ Kenya we speak strongly against. Now this is the position that we take when it comes to police retaliating force against the general public. It shouldn't be excessive force, because they have special training, they know how to handle crowds. Let them handle crowds in a humane way, you know, in a controlled way. There is a way that you can bring down the violence, not by using gunshots. Time and again, we have asked the question, why don't the police use rubber bullets? Instead, they use live bullets, you know? And this it has been a question that we've raised again and again. And we hope that the police, especially during this campaign period, will actually, and I know and I understand that there are special trainings that are being done to commandants. I heard that being mentioned yesterday. Yes, and I hope that this training will actually help now in managing now elections. Because like we mentioned, electoral justice means that we don't have loss of lives because of an election, you know, and such things.
Okay. Stella, are police exempt from prosecution? Do you have a provision to actually deal with police who use excess force during this time?
Yes. In fact, there is a body, IPOA. It investigates these excesses.
Police excesses.
Yes, these excesses. And there is also the internal affairs unit of the police.
Okay.
A separate office where they also deal with police excesses. So when these offenses, let us call them offenses, happen by police officers, and IPOA takes up the matter. If it's a criminal offense, the police officer will be charged. We've seen police officers being charged with murder.
So the file comes from IPOA to ODPP?
Yes, and sometimes if something happens, the DPP can direct IPOA investigate this and submit your report. And once we see there's a criminal element involved, we recommend charging that police officer. And we have several cases in court of police officers being charged with murder, manslaughter. Yes. So
what I want you to just bring some light into this thing of the ODPP has a power to direct investigations, because I think that is why either there's a misunderstanding from the citizen point of view as to now it confuses the role of investigative officers and now ODPP. At what point does the DPP direct investigations?
You see, the mandate of ODPP is based on Article 157 of the Constitution. It's very clear on what the DPP should do, which includes dealing with criminal cases in Kenya. Actually, that is one of the key roles of DPP, to handle criminal cases, prosecution of criminal cases in court. The DPP has the power to direct the IG to investigate any matter and submit a report back to the office for whether we are charging or whatever the case is. So it's very clear. Each institution has its own mandate. Same as the NPS. They have their own mandate under the Constitution to investigate. Same with the DCI, to investigate. So each office bears different roles, completely different, but we work as one. We support each other. To investigate, I come and prosecute. If we feel like this part has not been adequately investigated, we redirect back.
So you
That
can
is-
direct at that point for
yes.
them to go back and investigate.
Yes.
All
Yes.
right. Okay.
At any time, even when a case is in court and you feel this aspect was not addressed well, you can always direct them, cover the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 areas, and as you proceed with the case.
Okay.
Yes, so that the case is watertight.
Let me ask something else. SGBV during elections. What lens are you using to look at this SGBV? Because normally when we talk about SGBV, we look a lot at domestic violence. We look a lot at maybe discrimination in the workplace. But now this is in relation to elections. What lens are you using to look at SGBV during elections? And then how do you intend to deal with such cases?
See, there's SGBV that happens during election. It's like an election offense. It's because it has happened during election period. But the statutes are the same.
Okay.
The SOA Act is the same. The
SOA
penalty
is
is
what
the
now?
same. The
SOA
Sexual
is-
Offences Act. Sorry.
Okay.
The Sexual Offences Act
Yeah.
is the same. The penalty is the same. The ingredients for looking at this offense is the same.
Yeah.
Only that the act happened during an election period, and probably by virtue of you being a woman, so you're considered weaker, so someone probably took advantage of that during an election period. Do you see the chaos? Maybe someone raised your house during the chaos, like in 2007, you raped your children.
Yeah. Are you looking at also utterances that are, demeaning to women?
Yes.
Especially those running for office, as SGBV
You
or
see,
hate speech?
What is hate speech? It's I said matamshi.
Matamshi.
A threat, an insult, or a publication that is offensive.
Yeah.
So if I abuse you by virtue of you being a woman, for example, it's kind of a hate speech offense.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
So if I stand somewhere and insult a woman campaigning, that's hate speech.
What is the reason behind it?
See, to make people not consider her because she's a woman.
It could be. It could be.
Yeah.
Depending on the circumstances. You see, and in the interpretation of that message,
Okay.
it is just not one thing. Umesema and automatically in hate speech.
Okay.
What are the circumstances around
What you're saying.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I think an important ingredient, like Stella is trying to mention, is mostly hate speech is not directed to an individual. It's mostly to a group.
It's a bigger.
It's when maybe you say something against women at large. Now that is hate speech. Maybe now if I say something against a single woman, just one woman, maybe they would report me for defamation, or maybe another offense. Because hate speech, maybe some of those elements, when you are talking about groups of people, you want to incite violence or hatred against that group of people because maybe of their origin, of their maybe their language, or maybe their sex and gender. Then that becomes hate speech.
That becomes hate speech. Okay.
And of course, now you've mentioned something very sensitive. SGBV during the time of election. It's something that also as an organization we are focusing on, especially when it comes to women aspirants that have actually presented themselves as candidates for the election. They face they don't have a fair advantage over their male counterparts because we've seen women being told, hey, you can't campaign in a dress. Now you have to wear
The dress is too short, the dress is too long,
you
your
have to
trousers
wear
too tight.
trousers.
Yeah.
Because when you are in a rally, maybe somebody sexual harassment and things like that are committed against women.
So that is also part of it.
Yes.
What finally, is corruption part of this guidelines in this compendium? Are you looking at corruption?
Yes.
There is
Voter bribery.
Yes.
voter bribery.
Yes. It's and the source of the funds, campaign funds. You see, we have to trace if it's a proceed of crime.
Yeah.
Yes.
I've always had a problem with that, by the way, the source of campaign. Because I'm
Funds.
imagining,
You have
where
to
are you getting all
disclose.
this money?
I think in the ORP, Political Parties Act,
Yeah.
you have to disclose the source of funds.
Okay.
And there's a maximum amount that you should spend. I don't know whether it was passed. No, it was not passed. But you have to declare your source of funds.
I think they did. At some point, they said MCS need to have 3M for fund for their campaign. CG, governor, B and B.
And luckily, you know, sometimes it becomes a challenge because the same laws that we want to govern the politicians, they are the one expected to pass that law. And that is how the Campaign Financing Act has remained pending in Parliament. Because it's coming to regulate politicians. And they don't want to be regulated on expenditure. They don't want to be regulated in that area. Because it's crazy when you hear that to run a campaign for an MP, you need over 50 million Kenyan shillings. It doesn't make sense. When you hear presidential campaigns running into billions of shillings,
the cap was at 4 billion.
At 4 billion, and you simple arithmetic, a president wouldn't even earn even $500 million for the 5 years that they are in office.
But I had a conversation where it said there are those things that come with the office that people actually would just fight for. But I think it's important that corruption is part of this, SGB is part of this, and hate speech is also part of this. Because I think, and maybe now, the next elections will have a better, this one is maybe the first one using this compendium, right? Maybe the next one will become better as well.
And of course, like she mentioned, the coordinated role of different government agencies. Now we will see EACC coming out very strongly in now trying to look into issues of voter bribery.
But then what do you do when you hear someone say, and they say it, "Enda tu kule alafu ukuje." I know. Isn't that?
It's actually
you even see clips of politicians handing out money.
Money to people.
So it is there. It is there.
Lakini hamsikii kuongeza citizens kwa hii compendium.
Citizens by there are there. Actually, when we are talking about any action or inaction committed by citizens, it is such things that we are talking about. When you are being transported to a polling station, you can actually be arrested. Yes.
But again, we must recognize that in our context, there's poverty, there's unemployment, there's need to survive. So, well, there are those realities that you have to face. That you can solve one and cause a problem in another space. So we really need to look at how to balance things. So I want to wind up and thank you. This discussion is normally 1 hour, but it goes so fast. And when you see Mike standing there, just no time is up. So I don't know whether you have final words as I just scroll through.
As ICJ Kenya, our final word to the Kenyan population and to the Kenyan politician is that there is life beyond election. There is so much. We have a country to build, we have a country to give to ourselves and to future generations and to posterity. So let us not make elections a do or die thing. We understand the importance of elections because they are what takes us to the future. Because it is through elections now, like we've already mentioned, governments for the people, by the people, and of the people are formed. And once governments are formed like that, then prosperity as a nation then follows us.
All right.
Yes.
Stella, final words. Na lazima uanze na haki na usawa hashtag.
Hashtag haki na usawa. Elections come and go. But Kenya remains.
Yes.
So for the young people, angalia kesho after the elections. You want to wake up and go to work and do your thing as you've been doing as usual. Not now kunaendaje unahofia the chaos. It is not necessary.
It's not necessary.
Yes.
Okay. So Sam Karaoke asked something we're discussing here. Thank again, Sam Karaoke. How do you regulate on source of funds for campaigns, especially for individuals who are currently in office?
Regulating funds is simply saying we want to know where you are getting your money from. We want to know that your money is actually clean money. It's not money that has been stolen from public coffers and then directed to do campaigns. We also don't want to make campaigns incentivized by money. That is why we can say running a campaign is costly, but let us limit it to production of posters, maybe having a public address system, and maybe having just 2 or 3 cars to move around a county. Just that. That is what we are saying. When
That is what you are saying.
And to put a cap on the how much you'll spend.
How much you'll spend.
The campaign.
Yes.
Is that possible to
It's
regulate?
possible. It's done elsewhere.
Other countries do
yes.
that? In Africa?
In Africa, South Africa, we saw the other day Malema being held to account on money that he had gotten from a cigarette company.
Okay.
Because when you are given money by companies that are in a country, then that means there are favors you will have to give back to that company.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Sam umesikia, Sam karaoke. And then Yusuf Kimanthi says something very interesting. Actually, Sam still says, surely there's some light at the end of the tunnel. Great leadership and direction from the ODPP and the entire justice system. Yesterday I was told, I say criminal justice. When you're writing a statement, especially for ODPP, say criminal justice system. And you find yourself mentioning it too much. I was asking, is there a synonym for criminal justice system? Anyway, thank you, Sam Karaoke. Yusuf Kimanthi says another important thing. The citizens have a solemn duty to maintain peace and observe the rule of law. Relevant institutions must sensitize the public on some of the election-related offenses and the need to engage in the vices, not to engage in the vices. Once the public becomes aware, then there will be reduction of the commissions or omissions. And I think he's right. When I know, and I think also the purpose of this whole ODPP Café is to tell you what the offenses are.
Exactly.
And then get to know the penalties, get to know the impact. Because nowadays the world is just not about talk without impact. What is the impact of what you're about to say or what you've done? So I think it's very important, actually, from your different organizations, and both state and non-state actors, engage the citizen.
Yes.
Watu wakijua, but they act differently.
We actually soon starting the sensitization.
Okay.
Kwa mashinani, yes, kwa ground.
Yeah. All right. So Yusuf, there's going to be sensitization on the ground ahead of the next elections. We hope that the citizen will take note of this. So we've had quite an interesting discussion, and thank you everyone for watching. Clement, asante sana for being our is it dictionary? Martin, asante mdau. Do you say wadau na mdau? Is it mdau? I don't know. Anyway, thank you, Mse. And Geoffrey Otieno, look out for advertising that may be done when there are positions that are open. And again, it was made clear that the institutions are quite different and the human resource needs are also very different. Thank you, Ian Josh, for watching, and everyone else. For those who are watching and following us, we want to thank you once again. And I like the discussion. I like where it is going. And we've been talking to a youth here, very young people who also believe in the future of this country. So, do you say Sembuse Wewe? Even you.
Yes, Sembuse Wewe.
Sembuse Wewe. Please be very aware of what the law says. Respect each other. If we respect each other as citizens, if we follow what the law says, then we will be fine. Elections don't have to be a scary thing. It can be something we look forward to because we want to change how we are governed, but not how we live with each other. So that said, we'll keep discussing election and preparedness and how institutions, both state and non-state actors, are prepared for this day. And of course, we pray that you also get prepared in your own way. Your value system,
yes,
how you deal with people, how you talk to people, how you campaign for your person. Don't make it a do or die situation. With that said, I have come to the end of the program. I want to wish you a very restful weekend, and let's catch up on Monday, see what we shall be talking about and who we'll have on the coming Friday. God bless you.